Hey everybody, this is Professor Lilly, and we have just started Module 2. So similar, in fact, all four of the modules are the same design. So we will have 3 weeks. We will have the reading week, and during that week, the discussion leaders, the module leaders, will have time to start working on the presentation. And then in the presentation discussion week, they will hand me, I haven't found out yet if they want to do a live Zoom session, or if they're going to record it, do a presentation or a Prezi and do voice annotation over it, similar to the last module. So, and if we did do a live presentation, Zoom presentation, any of the modules, then we would I would record it so that if anyone can't be here, I mean, one would presume that the time would not necessarily work out for everyone. So if you can attend, then that's great, and if not, I would record it, and you would be expected to watch it after I post it. So when they are ready next week with their presentation, it will be in here, and then after the presentation, they will start the Module 2 discussion, which should, hopefully should last around 8 days or so. And then for those who are not discussion or module leaders, you'll write your summary essay in the third week. So for this first intro week, I decided that what I'm going to do is I looked at some of the reactions to the module from last semester. So I was going to kind of show you some of their reactions, and then also talk about kind of some general issues and thoughts that I have regarding copyright. I think it's a fascinating topic. So I think that there's going to be tons to talk about. I mean, we all, whether or not we know it or not, are dealing with copyright issues in every day, because we all consume a lot of media. That's all copyrighted, and then we also produce a lot of media now with social media, especially, and technically that's copyrighted by someone. I mean, sometimes it might be the app might claim the copyright on what you're producing. Sometimes they recognize that you have certain copyright privileges to that that content, and nowadays lots of people make money with all the possibilities of media creation through offering up. So, for example, I'm in a band, and I just want to. I'm not looking ever to make any money from my music, but I want to put it out there. And so, just to be able to put it out there in Spotify and things like that means that I have to go ahead and claim the copyright, and I have to. I'm giving. I pretty much have to sell it, because a lot of those places, like Pandora and Spotify, they basically require anything that's up there to be available for purchase. So even no, I'm not really interested in that aspect of it, and I don't really promote the band's music very much because it's a hobby. I'm nonetheless kind of thrust into the whole copyright issue, whether or not I want to be. So there's lots of stuff here. So I'm not going to get too much into, because I've written these explanations of what you should be getting out of each of the viewings, and the cases here, like the Sony Betamax and Grokster, and these are the readings for the most part that I kept or added based on the recommendations from last semester's students, and I got rid of some too. That they thought weren't very useful. But start with this. I found it, and I thought it was fairly entertaining. Got a truck? And anyway, I don't think I'm gonna play it now. But it's really a nice crash course to kind of get you primed up. So I would watch that, and also I want you to watch the. This is number 2, or I want you to watch both versions, part 1, and then that was part 1, and then part 2, and it just gives you kind of a lot of primer for kind of understanding when you start to read these more complex decisions and readings. And as you'll note, some of them at the bottom I've marked at as being optional. Okay, so I'm going to switch over and show you some of the a reaction from last semester, and then bring up some stuff online. So let me switch real fast to that. I was just looking at Jesse's video. He already posted his, and I totally agree with what he was saying or in general, but also at the end here.
In Fortnite, and there's a lawsuit about that, and there's a lawsuit about a couple other dance moves, and I think that it's crazy. The amount of content that is being produced these days is extraordinary, and it's higher than it's ever been before. There's more content than there's ever been before, and that's continuing to increase. The more content there is, the more copyright there is, the more copyright holders there are, and the more complicated this whole process becomes. So I think that's really the general consensus, is that this stuff is really complex and really confusing, and there's not really a standard way to go about it.
Okay, yeah, so I completely agree with him there. I mean, I think that in Module 2, if you think about your module ending essay, I mean, there's certainly a lot of things you could, advice and topics that you would say, here's what you really need to know about copyright, because I think no matter what type of communication professional, or even lots of different, like even I think doctors or medical professionals, lawyers, all sorts of people, different industries, they have to worry about copyright, partially because the fact that we all use the World Wide Web and other digital technologies that make it really, really simple to copy and paste and to use something. And if you're using any kind of tangible media in your job, which pretty much everyone is, then you could be possibly making a copyright infringement, or you could be creating something for yourself or for your employer, and then bam, as soon as you make that tangible media, it is copyrighted. Obviously, as we know, if you want to be able to collect damages, you need to go, or probably someone for you, or your company is going to file for the copyright officially. But as soon as you create it, you do technically have the copyright for that form of tangible media. So in terms of the reading, one thing when I think about this, and I think most of the modules are going to touch on this, and we can think of it within the greater what you're learning in this master's program in general, is how technology is really disrupting these different media industries, right? So in a second, I'm going to get to the Sony Betamax lawsuit with Universal and Disney in that Supreme Court case that really set up what the trajectory was going to be, and if they hadn't made a different decision, then they could have really I think messed it all up. But one thing in general that I was interested in, especially when I saw this reading, was thinking back to the way the music industry was when I was younger. So, I mean, in fact, we can see here. So you would assume that with inflation, the industry, in terms of the gross revenue, would be higher than it was like 20 years ago, right? And it's only now getting to the point where, in terms of total revenue, it's only finally getting back to that point. And partially because, I mean, the record companies were just making a killing with CD sales, right? And just, I mean, when just thinking about Betamax and CD sales, I mean, all those things were all technological innovations as well, and changed the way that people consume, listen to, and produce music. So the music industry, and in fact, in one of my pop culture course, I have a really interesting reading talking about technology, how it drives, or how it's driven lots of different aspects, or all of them, in terms of the music industry. since the 19 or really since radio. But that pace of technological change starts really to quicken by the 1970s and on after that. Um, and getting into what Jesse was just saying, with all the digital content creators, it's not surprising here that we see that the type of sales, excuse me, um, we get more in terms of performance rights, people getting money through streaming, um, uh, and uh, well, synchronization, has remained pretty much the same. But a lot of these artists are making money in each one of these different areas a little bit, right? So if we go on to the next reading about the creative apocalypse that wasn't, I was not really aspiring musician, but I was in bands in the early 1990s, and at that point, the only way that you could think of making money was to get on a record label, and certainly touring was part of that. But it was all about getting the record label and getting them to help you produce CDs and so on from there. Nowadays, there are a lot of artists making money through the fact that they could share their music, get people interested in it, and make a teeny bit of money, not a teeny bit, but certainly not so much that you can live off of it through streaming, but through that able to get on to bills and to tour and make most of their money that way. So there are, in terms of the number of artists making a middle class type living, it's way more now than it was at that point. Partially because with the CD sales, those the giant corporations were making most of the money um, that way. Um, and with that in mind, in terms of technological disruption, so um, and this also makes me think about what it was like for um, in the 1990s. I remember, and maybe some of you also do as well, the first time when I was told, oh, all your CDs, what you need to do is get this software and put it in the computer. That at that point it was relatively new to have a CD drive, ROM drive in a computer, and they started becoming pretty standard for all computers sold for about 10 years there. And you can just rip them into MP3s. And I was this is before that I knew about the sharing apps that you could share and download tons of MP3s. But that innovation of itself kind of took the whole idea of the mixtape to the next level. So with the Betamax decision, right? Think about what would happen if the Supreme Court had sided on the side of Universal and Disney. And so, but granted, that was in the mid 1980s. But basically, would like IBM and Apple and all the computer companies have thought or wanted to put CD-ROM drives in their CPUs that they were selling? Because at that point, it could have been considered, or at least maybe the apps themselves could have been something that would be illegal to use. Like the whole use or like half of the uses of computers that we think of today could be considered illegal, or maybe even the whole tool itself, if they side with Universal and Disney. So I think this really kind of set it all up for, all right, we're going to push this problem down the road, but we're not going to blame users, and we're not going to blame the creators of production and just digital computer hardware in general. We're going to kind of kick it on down the road. And I think that really allows for an incredible amount of innovation in both hardware, software, and networking technologies as we get into the late 90s and or late 80s and 1990s. So, as several of you noted in the discussion, this decision really set the stage for where we are now, and also the decisions made in the late '90s that impact us now. And as Justice Stevens said, and so fair use was established in the 1976 copyright law. So he refers back to that, but also to commerce, like noting that that you're really going to block a lot of possible innovation and interesting things that innovation through businesses can do and offer to consumers. So really resting it in consumers' rights, even if a technology like the home computer can possibly be used for infringements, it's also used for many other things, and we can't shut those down just for the possibility of stopping infringement at the same time. Um, so from there, 1998, as I'm sure you recognized, was a really big deal, or a big year in terms of copyright. And so we have two things going on here. The 1998 extension of copyright, also known as the Sonny Bono law, and what's kind of interesting there is so it wasn't necessarily a law that was put forward by Sonny Bono, although he did advocate for it, but he died in a skiing accident that year, and since he was kind of a and even though he was in Congress at the same time, as a musician, artist had many copyrights to himself. Like he actually, you know, stood, and I guess after it was passed, his heirs stood to benefit from the extension of copyright at that point. Because he was a vocal advocate, they decided to name the act after him. Um, and there's also, I'm not sure if it's so much of a myth, like but there's maybe a misconception that Disney spent millions and millions of dollars, and they did spend. It wasn't just them though. I mean, not Disney by themselves, but the recording industry, and both music, um, certainly lobbied a lot. And this article I found was pretty interesting because they could only find um, evidence of Disney itself contributing like maybe $5,000 or $6,000 to each of the Congress people who put forward the legislation. Um, and also interesting in this is that um, since there hasn't been another extension since then, so Mickey Mouse is actually set to go into, I think somewhere it says here, the public domain in just a few years. And at this point, it doesn't seem like there's going to be another push. We'll see what Disney wants to do with that. Obviously, you can understand. I mean, they make. Granted, there's a lot of piracy with the Mickey Mouse image, but still, they make a lot of money by being able to exclusively use that image and all sorts of things associated with their theme parks and properties. Okay, so that was the one thing that was big in terms of setting, what the current copyright is, the standard, the number of years. And then the same year, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and it didn't actually, the provisions didn't go into enforcement until 2 years later, until 2000. So, and part of the things that it did was it also kind of aligned the expectations enforcement of copyright with international standards at the time, and and it also kind of harked back or recognized the findings or the court's ruling in the Sony Betamax decision, and so they recognize here that safe harbors should protect service providers. So thinking today, such as YouTube or Facebook. But it did put in an important provision that also kind of structures what happens today is the notice and takedown procedures. Um, you might recall that in the late 19, 1990s, but also into the 2000s, there were several high-profile suits against college students who were using like BitTorrent and Napster and those type of services and offering up huge archives of music and movies. And for a while there, the music and movie industries were suing individual students, but also high school students, college students, colleges themselves. And there wasn't usually there weren't a lot of money to recuperate in that, and it wasn't good public relations for a huge billion-dollar industry to be suing college students. And as the technology developed, they were able to really kind of take the notice and take down procedures and operationalize it much better. So I think like about the mid 2000s, like 2000, maybe 2009, 2011, 2012 is when you started to see more content on YouTube being instantly taken down. And in fact, in the ways that it works are pretty interesting. I kind of assumed before I started reading more about it in the module that that YouTube was acting more just instantly on behalf of the copyright holders in the movie and music entertainment industry, and in fact they try to push back as much as possible because they want as few videos to be blocked because their whole revenue system is based on that, because popular videos get more ad revenue, and the ad revenue is made by YouTube, and then also their channel owners, the authors. So and so, for example, they were talking about here this article that there had been a lot of claims recently made by just a song being heard or even hummed in the background of a video, and the bots, the software that runs, being able to hear that sound signature and instantly send that cease and desist order to YouTube to pull down that video. And YouTube is recognizing that there's lots of revenue being lost by everyone in this scenario, and we need to work more to try to make these type of infringements cases not like in this one here, where someone a YouTuber claimed to have lost five-figure salary or income in a video where someone is just saying a line from a Bon Jovi song. So I didn't realize that YouTube was actively trying to work on behalf of the video creators. So yeah, and so for, let's see if it says here how many years, but yeah, for about 10 years now, YouTube has been using its content ID, and what this does, if content copyright holders claim there's a violation, then rather than necessarily immediately taking it down, then which typically they will do if you're not a type of channel producer or YouTuber who is making ad revenue. So if you're not one of those, like if you're one of my students in one of my courses who I had say make this movie for a project or audio slideshow put on YouTube, and if they put in a song and it's hit by one of by the automation that's looking for copyrighted songs, then they'll take it down because those students do not have channels that's making ad revenue. But if you have one that you're making ad revenue, like here it's talking about guitar professionals who are doing tutorials, right? And so you're saying, okay, here's how you do the solo on an Iron Maiden song. And typically that will be hit, but rather than by the content ID system, but rather than immediately taken down, they'll just let you know, and they'll say, because of this claim, we're going to take X amount of the revenue that you should be making for the ads that are showing during this video, and we're sending it to the copyright owner. At this point, as it says here, and by 3 years of the system, it surpassed 3 billion in total payouts. So I mean that's another way around it, but at the same time, I think you could if you hired a lawyer, you can make a really good case for if I play 10 seconds of this song, um, especially in certain types of context, then it should be fair use. Now, the biggest issue with fair use, I mean, and several of you talked about it, and it was touched on in all the threads, and lots of you gave a lot of great examples of cases that where they couldn't really claim fair use and others where they could. Is it's all about are you making money off of a copyrighted material that the original copyright owner themselves want to make money off of that copyrighted material. So this kind of gets into the issue of memes and why generally with memes in social media that you don't get a lot of suits. First of all, the biggest issue is that if I'm sharing someone's copyrighted work on social media, I'm not looking to make money for it. And there's like, for example, if I share something on Facebook, there's no mechanism on Facebook for me as to make money through my individual personal Facebook account, right? So I'm just sharing that material, so they can't really claim that I'm taking away from the commercial value of it. I did find this article that had a couple interesting um, cases. And this is actually one that I've seen before. So, for example, the World War II Downfall, it's a German language movie. And you've probably seen some of these parodies. Like this was one of my favorite ones where
Und Pankow. Und im Osten ist der Feind bis zur Linie Lichtenberg-Marsdorf.
they basically took part of the movie where Hitler freaks out about realizing that they're losing the war, and they made it as if they're telling him that his favorite character, Ned Stark, had been killed.
Steiner konnte nicht genügend Kräfte für einen Angriff massieren. Der Angriff Steiner ist nicht erfolgt.
Now this was, and then and this later in the or from here on out, he completely freaks out. And the comedy is in the fake captions that the meme creator or the viral video creator put in there. But this particular clip of the movie has actually been picked up by meme sites that offer it as one of 100 different video clips that you can take and put your own captions and then hit save, and then it'll export it as on their site, and you can share it anywhere. So you can create your own meme, and I think those are the services that the producers have sued. So and this came up in one of the readings, and so obviously that would be a German. It depends on where the meme site is located. So if the meme site is is in the United States, and these are German people in Germany hold the copyright, they would have to come to the United States and sue them under their law here. Or if you wanted to sue someone, if you wrote a song and someone in, let's say, England used it somehow, you would have to go over there and sue them. And because of that, for many years, starting in 1998 with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, most of these big treaties, so like the new treaty between America, United States, Mexico, and Canada, agreement has copyright provisions in it. And in these copyright provisions, they include talking about safe harbors, and basically they extend our current copyright laws in the United States to Mexico and Canada to make it really easier, much more easy for copyright holders to sue for any infringements in any three of those countries. And then also, I was going to mention, so we're going to get into privacy in Module 3, but there's also been some issues here. Like, I don't know if I brought it up, that dancing, what's his name? The Star Wars kid is a famous meme where this guy is pretending to fight, similar to one of the lightsaber fights. And he didn't get permission for the video that was produced in school to then be put on the internet, and certainly didn't want it to become a meme. So these issues of sharing, a lot of times when they don't go into issues of copyright because they're sharing it and you're not making money off of them, then get into privacy when there's issues of people not getting permission for their likeness to be used in commercial purposes. So lastly, what I want to talk about is another topic that came up several times, is the Creative Commons licenses. And I think that a lot of the kind of progressive development and the use and understanding of copyright has come through the World Wide Web, that it makes it so easy for things to be shared. And when I was a professional web developer, for example, there was kind of an ethos of share alike. So, for example, if you're coding a website, a lot of the code behind the website, whether it's like Perl scripts or CGI or just the HTML, is all you can look behind it really easy. It's not really hacking. You just look and say, look at the code, and there it is. And generally, in the kind of coding community, there's a big ethos of just sharing and using whatever you want to, especially in the 1990s. And that's when Lawrence Lessig founded the Creative Commons and came up with the idea of that copyright can be and often is a huge impediment to sharing our culture and just allowing people to share. You might even want people to share or take whatever you want, whatever they want from you, and use it. And if they don't know that you're willing to share, then they would be, unsure of using it because of copyright laws. Maybe they could get sued. So on their site, they have some data that's a little bit outdated, and but it just shows you how populous it has become. And the big reason is because of how much publicity you can get by sharing and by offering people the right to share your work for you. So sharing has become a huge aspect of letting people know this is out there. And as you know from the reading, with the Creative Commons license, there's several different types of licenses you can claim. So you can claim, like for example, on sometimes I put out some of my music that I've written, and I'll just put out a creative license that says you're free to copy it and do whatever you want to with it, except for making money from it. Now, granted, I'm not making money from my own music, but if I'm not going to make money from it, then I don't want anyone else to either. And in fact, for some reason, I try to share my music to friends on Facebook, and Facebook has decided that since I have a name for my band, that I must be wanting to make money from it, and therefore they will only, like let's say I just share a post, and I as a father, and put a picture of my kids and say, oh, we went out on a chair on the walk, then potentially all my friends on Facebook would see that. And so maybe there might be 40, 50
people that remark on it. If I share my song, then Facebook says, "Oh, you're a member of a band, so if you want us to share this to more people, granted they're all my friends that I would share it with, that's it. Then you have to boost your post because they think I want this is a money making adventure for me or venture, and therefore I'm willing to spend money to push it out there. And so if I share, I mean, I can share a song that I wrote and from SoundCloud, and I might get, and then later I can see how many people actually saw it, and it'll say, oh, 4 people saw this. So that's only sending so many people out of, I have like 500 friends on Facebook, and so it's kind of funny that way because they've realized that people are willing to spend money to try to market their music or their artwork or as a business. Obviously, Facebook is making a lot of money off of businesses trying to boost their number of views on any particular post that they might be doing. Um, so it's a big money making $1 billion industry. It's part of marketing now, the sharing culture.